This is my 2013 Skoda Octavia Mark III 2-litre TDI. When I went to refuel it today, the fuel filler cap refused to open. It felt completely locked, closed. So a bit of googling online, it looks like there's a problem with the lock motor mechanism, and people were complaining that there's no easy way to release it. You have to effectively break the lock open. I tried everything to avoid doing that, but in the end that's what I had to do. I couldn't find a video on this, so I thought I'd quickly share what I had to do to get into mine. So I tried first of all getting into the boot lining. So you have to take the hanger out that's up here. This has got a torque screw which is up behind some trim. You've got to pull out the light coloured trim around the back, and there's a torque screw at the top, and then there's a couple of sprung steel clips which you've just got to gently lever out, and then that gives you access to the carpet to get the carpet out. And then the lock mechanism's up inside, and then this is the actual electrical connector for the lock mechanism, which you can unplug, but there's no quick release or emergency release latch or anything. You really are stuck. You can't push it out from inside. There's a torque screw, so you have no option but to open the flap. So this is what I had to do. I took some words of advice from the internet. Unfortunately, I still managed to break the flap slightly and also damage the paintwork, which has irritated me somewhat. But this is what I had to do. So I applied tape down the vertical section around the bend at the bottom along the flat edge. I put several layers of tape, but that clearly wasn't enough, because you have to put your screwdriver in here to where the lock mechanism is. If I was doing it again, I would put gaffer tape or something much thicker on there. But essentially what you've got to do is you've got to prise the door open far enough. You can only realistically get it to about there, so you can get your screwdriver in. So what I did is I used a plastic wedge. I think I had a plastic wedge which came with my dishwasher, my washing machine. So I used that to get in and get it open, but a credit card or something would probably suffice. And then I've got a thin piece of wood which I then positioned underneath about here, and that held the door open approximately that amount. And then I used my screwdriver in here where the lock engages. There's a torque screw here, which is why you can't get at any of this unless you get into the lock. So this is the lock. You've got this piece on the end here which has got this shape to it, which engages in here. Okay, so it goes in that way, and it's actually locked in that position. That's what stops you opening it. So unfortunately, you see I've cracked the plastic here. I put the screwdriver in here, and I tried to rotate this, but there's no way you'll rotate this. If you could shear this off, it would be fine, because you've got to replace this anyway. But unfortunately I've cracked that, so you've probably got to replace this whole section here. I've no idea what that's going to cost, so I'll have to look into that. Once you've got access to here, there's a torque screw there. I think it's possibly a TX20 that allows you to pull this out. You need to take the filler cap off, and then it just pulls out. This whole piece comes out. It's a little bit tight where the plastic goes in behind here, but if you just manoeuvre it round, it will come out. And then the actual lock mechanism with it, once the torque screws out, is just slid in. There's some plastic slots here, and it just slides out. Obviously you need to undo the electrical connections. Now I went slightly further than just doing that. I actually disassembled the lock motor. It's got these little barbed clips. You need to get a sharp craft knife or something and cut down behind them, because there's little bulges of plastic on the main body which push these clips up hard, so you can't undo them. So you need just to cut in behind them. Each one, you can see just where I've nicked the plastic in behind, there's like a bump on each of them. And then it's just a case of a couple of flat-bladed screwdrivers just to lever it round. They've also used adhesive in a couple of places just to give it some extra strength. And then it will pop open. There's a big spring behind this circular part here. It's reasonably strong, but not ridiculous. It's just for the return mechanism. That all comes out. You'll see there's a nylon part and some grease on the top. You can lift that out, but only once you've got the motor out. Now, to get the motor out, you see the two electrical terminals. You just want to use a pair of long nose pliers and literally just pull them straight up. They will come out, because if you don't take those out, the motor will be retained in behind. They go directly into the motor. So with those two contacts out, the motor lifts out along with the worm drive. You can leave the other parts in if you want. And what I did is I then applied 12 volts. I pushed these two terminals back into the motor once it was out, applied 12 volts to it, and nothing happened. However, if you spin the spindle slightly and put 12 volts on it, it then runs, and then it just keeps running and running and won't stop running. So I imagine there's some oxidation of the bushes, sorry, not the bushes, the brushes or the commutator, such that, because the motor's always going to stop in the same position every time. It's going to stop in one position when it closes, stop in another position when it opens, and it'll go between those two positions, and that's it. So it doesn't get many revolutions on it. So I guess it gets worn at the ends, because that's where the bulk of the current will go when the motor tries to start up. So anyway, it seems to run now. I've plugged it back in and it works, but I'm not going to trust this because it's such a pain if it fails. I think, looking online, I think there's another version of this. If I can, I'll get the part number off here and I'll put it in the description. But I think someone's done one of these with like an emergency release tag, like some of the Audis have got. So that comes out into the boot liner, and you can pull on that to unlatch this. So I'll see if that's a possibility, because if it is, I'll fit one of those. But to be fair, I mean, the car is what now? Nearly 10 years old, so you know it's done okay. But it's a shoddy bit of design, in as much as you can't really access the boot, access the fuel flap from the inside. You have to get in through the flap, and I think seeing posts online, even the dealer reckons they break about 1 in 3 of these when they try to break into them to replace this part. So it's not great, but it could be worse. Anyway, hopefully that's helped you out, because these things always happen at the worst time. So yes, you just have to accept that you may well break this part, but just protect your paint a bit better than I did, and then at least all you've got to do in theory is replace this. I mean, if it's not too badly broken, you can probably leave it, because let's face it, if someone's coming to steal your fuel, they're hardly going to worry about scratching your paint and breaking this. They're just going to get a crowbar in there and wrench it open, and they'll be siphoning your fuel out anyway. So I wouldn't worry too much. It all seems a bit pointless. Anyway, I hope that's helped.